Welcome back everybody, my name is Robert, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can make a heads-up display in GB Studio that works vertically and horizontally. As you can see here, we have a number ticking up at the very bottom of the screen, and that's just based on time. Every second it goes up by 1, and obviously you can put any value you want. You can put your health, your heart, you can put icons there, you can put it all along the bottom of the screen, and I'll show you how to do that in this video. But first, I'm going to talk about how I figured this out, because actually GB Studio Central has figured it out maybe years ago. So if we have a look at GB Studio Central here, if we type in HUD, we have two articles, basics creating a HUD and creating a tile-based HUD. And the HUD that we've seen before is just a pinned actor on the screen that holds information. And this is very limiting because you can't have too many sprites or tiles or actors on the same line, but it's very useful for certain scenarios, so you should definitely read this article because it has it all written out very simply of how you can do it yourself. If you just want to have, for example, just display something in the top corner like a clock or something that's ticking down, you can very easily do that with this pinned actor here on the screen. But secondly, a tile-based HUD, it works really well for a static scene or a scene that uses parallax. So in the sample town, you see here, they've put the HUD at the very top of the screen, and then as the locked vertically level moves sideways, your information stays at the top of your screen, which is fantastic. But most of us, I think, will want to make a HUD that also works if the level is moving vertically. And that's what this tutorial didn't do for me, is show me that it works vertically as well. This one works as having a boss on the side of the screen that is always on the side of the screen. So it's a HUD, and its screen size, it can use a lot of tiles. It's really optimized in comparison to that pinning an actor to the screen. However, this one was weird because, in my opinion, it could have just been done with a sprite, and the fact it's called screen-sized bosses, it implied that it was a sprite in my head. So I misinterpreted this thing, and the fact that it didn't show me vertical changing of the HUD meant that I was confused. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I feel like a lot of you might be in the same position. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can take what they've taught us in this tutorial here, using this VM overlay submap, and we're going to make a HUD that works vertically and horizontally as you move around a level. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the sample project, because we all have access to it, and you can easily follow along with me figuring out what you need to do. But you can do this with any scene of your own game. And first of all, we're going to pick a scene, right? So I'm going to choose the sample town because, like I said, it shows vertical and horizontal movement. So if we were to make a HUD that is, for example, all along the bottom, I'd easily be able to show you that it works. However, if we were to do in one of the parallax scenes here, or as I've just shown, it's more difficult to prove that it works vertically. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the files, and we're going to take this image, and we're going to open it up in our chosen image editor. To find it, you go into the file where you saved the project, and then you go into the assets, and you go to backgrounds, and then the file is called sample_town. So as you might already know, I use GIMP because it's completely free, and I'm going to click on open image, and I'm going to open that image I just told you. So as you can see, it's not in color, but we know about GB Studio, it works on 4 colors of the Game Boy, and then in GB Studio, it adds color to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on view, and I'm going to show grid, and you'll have to do the same in your chosen software. So if you don't know how to do it, maybe Google it. And I'm also going to configure the grid to be 8 pixels by 8 pixels, which is how the Game Boy works. And I'm also going to be putting it into red so that we can more easily see it against the green. And now, one of the limitations of the overlay and the HUD is that it has to be either at the bottom of the screen or at the right of the screen. And if I pop back into GB Studio now to show you that when we put the overlay on the screen, we are limited to where it can go. So if I just roll it back a bit, How this works is that we're putting information from our background image onto the overlay. So then we need two things. We need the information on this background image, and then two, we need to have the overlay display at the correct position, and then put that information on it. So if I go over to one of these other scenes quickly and I type show overlay, you can see it covers the screen, and we can move it around using these things, and we can see that it moves right and it also moves down. So the issue with this is that if we're going to be drawing information onto the overlay, it means that we can't have the overlay, just be poking down from the top slightly, but we can have it poking up from the bottom slightly. We can also have it pointing in from the right slightly. And as you can see, you can even have, for example, the corner of the map have the information on it. So if you wanted to have an inventory, for example, that pops up while you're playing, maybe this is how you would do it. But I'll show you the steps you need to take in order to make it work. For my example, I'm going to be making it at the very bottom and all along the bottom. So I'm now back in GIMP, and we've discussed where the overlay goes, where we want it to go on the screen and where it can go. And a weird thing about this system is that we can't just put this overlay, for example, at the top left of our screen, because if the player was to walk up here, they would see the information, for example, the HUD overlay up here. So we have to put it down at the very bottom left, especially if we're going to have the overlay at the bottom left. The player will come down and the overlay will hide the information that's actually there on the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to choose 20 tiles here. I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to paint them white. There we go. And I'm going to write something that we can see in the game. So I've just typed in Robert Doman's HUD tutorial, and I'm going to now export this image and overwrite the original sample town file. So now that we've jumped it back into GB Studio, we can see that's exactly what it says across the bottom here. And now we're going to do the magic, okay? We're going to put this overlay on as we've shown, but we're going to have it one up from the bottom. So we're going to have it at 0.17. And then we're going to type in gbvm here, and we're going to get a gbvm script. And now what we're going to do, we're going to go over to the tutorial that has the screen-sized bosses, and we're going to take this bit right here, and we're going to copy it. But we're also going to read about how it works. Okay, so we can copy a subsection of the background layer into the window layer, which means the overlay, using these controls. So I don't know what the submap EX does, but we're just going to use the normal thing we have down here that I've copied. And we're going to have a look at this thing as well, the parameter and the purpose. So the X and Y is the overlay window of the upper left corner in tiles, and that doesn't make any sense. So if we look down here, if we look at the overlay window, I think it means the 0, 0. So it means that the overlay window itself, where are we painting on? So we're starting from the top left, so that'll be 0, 0. The width of the area in tiles, so it'll be 20 tiles. The height of the area in tiles, it'll be 1 tile. And the X coordinate within the background map, and the Y coordinate. So if we have a look back into GB Studio and we go down here, if we hover over the correct tile, it will say 0.55. So if we now paste this in here, the X we said was 0, the Y we said was 0, the width would be 20, the height would be 1, and then like we said down here it would be 0.55. However, I'm not sure this will work because it is quite complicated. So what we're going to do is click play and figure it out. Beautiful. So I made the game start in the correct scene by just dragging that little orange arrow to this scene. And now that we walk around, we can see that as we move sideways, it's at the bottom. And right now it could technically be broken because we know that this piece of information is at the bottom left of the game world, of the map. So if we move up, beautiful, it stays there. And that's all we really need, is that we have a piece of information staying on the screen as we move around. And that's what the overlay does. I imagine now that this means that we can't use the overlay to actually, do any effects Otherwise, this is what the overlay is being used for now, which may limit you, but I think the fact that we now have this piece of information at the bottom of the screen is fantastic, because we can use tile switching to update and change values as we play, just like I've done in other tutorials where we use the tile switching script. I'm going to show you how to do that here now. But before we do, I just want to go over these things again, these coordinate things. So the idea of the X and Y is that maybe you wouldn't want to display everything at the top left. You may want to only have half the screen be what's updated. I can't really think of an example of how or why you'd want to do that. So before I jump into that tile switching, I'm going to play around with these parameters with you, and we can see how they affect what we've done and see if we can learn anything from it. So the X coordinate on the overlay. So if I move the overlay up, so let's just see, and I'll move the overlay up by 2, and then I'll move the X and Y by 1. So let's offset it by 1. So instead of being at the top corner, it'll be 1 in, and the fact I've moved it up by 2 means that it will be even more strange. So let's see how that works. There we go. So we can already see that we've moved it in by 1, and unfortunately that the overlay is black. So anything that you're not replacing a tile with will be the color of the overlay, and the overlay can only be white or black. So this is what it would look like if you offset it by 1 and you had the overlay up by 1. So now let's see what happens when we move the overlay across by a couple. And I'll do that by clicking on 1, 2, here we go. So I've moved it across by a couple, but what that's done is that's shown the artwork on the background image. We can start to see it says row, the start of the Robert Doman's HUD tutorial. And so if we were to do something like this, we would want those background tiles that we're using and updating from to be moved across a couple, so that when we are in this bottom right-hand scene, bottom right-hand corner of the scene, we can't see it. We don't want to see the HUD unless it's the HUD. But looking back at this again, we can kind of imagine what the width and the height of the area in tiles does. It's just pulling on more information from the background level. So now we've experimented with this a bit more, I think we're confident with how this works. The X and Y are looking at the overlay. It's thinking about the top corner, the upper left. So then the X is how far from that top corner, and the Y is how far from that top corner down. The width and the height is how much are we going to be displaying. If we think about the XY is where we're starting, and then the height and width is where we're going to. The S, W, and SH are the X coordinate and the Y coordinate in the background map. So both of them are using the height and width, and they both have a starting point. So then we're pulling on information and putting it on. I hope that makes sense. I understand that it might still be complicated, and it did take me a while to figure out as well. This article came out in February 2023, so it's been a year and a half since it came out, and I wasn't able to figure it out in that time. So I'm hoping this will help you. So I'll now move on to arguably the most important part of this, is displaying and updating information on these background tiles that automatically get shown on this window layer. So we're back in GIMP, and now we have to think about what information do we want to show. And I'll keep it very simple, and I'll just make it a timer that's ticking up, okay? So you can do anything with this, anything number related, anything icon based, you can easily display on this bit here. However, the fundamentals are the same, and I've talked about them before in other tile switching videos, and that is that we want to have a unique tile to the background, so it doesn't exist anywhere else in this image, and a tile is obviously 8 by 8 pixels. And my simplest way of making sure a tile is unique is by writing a number in it. So we can easily count how many unique tiles we're using in our HUD, or unique to this specific point, just by looking at them. So if we have a 0, 1 here, so now we have 3 unique tiles here, and we know that because if you look around, there ain't any other places that is just saying 0, 0, 0, 1 or 0, 2. So we know for a fact that these are unique, and every single one of these tiles could be unique if we wanted to. And that's what's so good about this HUD that's displayed. It's so much more powerful than pinned sprites. However, it forces you to have a bar of some size. I guess you could move it to the corner, the bottom right, if you really wanted to, but it would still have that box that it's in, while a pinned actor can exist without this box around it. Step 2 of having tile switching and updating tiles is knowing the information you're going to put onto the tile. So I'm going to write some numbers, and we're going to have a time that's ticking up as we play. So I'm going to make a new document here that's 160 pixels wide by 144 tall. That's the size of the screen. I don't think it has to be the size of the Game Boy screen, but it's just what I like to do. We're going to put show grid, we're going to configure grid to 8 pixels, and now if we go up to the top, basically what I'm doing now is I'm doing what we've done in all the other tile switching videos, is make a tile set that we're pulling upon. So as you can see, I'm making the numbers 1 to 9, and that's because in each of the values that I've made unique, each of the scene points I've made unique, will just hold like, for example, 100 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 second. And as one goes to 9, and the next number will be 0, but the next number in the chain will be a 1, so it'll be 10. It'll be more obvious once I've got it in the game. So I'm going to export this into the assets folder of the game, and the asset folder will be the backgrounds. And that's a bit counterintuitive. I think that's changing in GB Studio 4. There'll be a tilesets folder. So I've just called it switchingnumbers.png. So if we export it now and we go back into GB Studio, if we now go down here, we can see our little numbers 0, 0, 1 and 0, 2. And now all we want to do is, first of all, we're going to put a GBVM script here. We're now going to find how to do tile switching from this. It should be in here. Actually, I remember it in the other tutorial. Here we go. VM replace tile. So I'll just copy this because I know this off by heart now, the rest of it. So we're now pasted in VM underscore replace underscore tile underscore XY. And now the next bit is simple. We say which tile do we want to replace. And we just hover over the tile we want to replace. It says 1555. So let's type in 1555. And now we need to add a reference. And we're just going to be referencing a background. And the background will be the background image we just made. And I called it switching numbers. And then it pops up here. And we just click on the one that says tile set, the first one. And then we just paste that in because it was added to our clipboard. We then have to tell it which tile from this background are we going to be taking. So if I quickly run over here, I put down a scene and it's switching numbers, we can see that from 0 to 9, the very bottom left of the screen that says the XY coordinate, we can see that it goes across and it goes from 0, 0, it goes up and goes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And so every tile in this scene that isn't repeating, all these white ones will be classed as the same coordinate, and it'll be 10, 0. Have a coordinate. So, and then when it goes off to the end, this will be number 19, and then the next one will be 20, and it goes around, and this will be 39, and then this one will be 40. So this is 0 all the way up to 9. So when we're pulling on information, we know that we're going to be pulling on whatever 9, from 0 to 9. We can just write the number here. Normally what I do is I put a variable there, but I'll do that in a minute because that's what I'm going to be doing with the time and adding time as it goes. So it'll be 1555, 1655, and 1755. So when we press play, we should see instantly when the game starts that these values get updated because we've told them to replace tile in this thing here before it fades in. So let's have a look. Let's see what happens. And as we can see, it's now updated. I'll now show you how we can update that as we go. So I'm going to use this actor here. I'm going to go on its update script, and I'm going to tick keep running while off screen. And it already waits 1 second, so I'm going to type in math here. Math functions, and then we're going to we're going to scroll down to the next available variable, global variable, and then we're going to rename it to time. And then I'm going to write seconds in brackets. Actually, it might not be a good idea, because you have to remember that we're going to be putting these variables into the script, and it doesn't like spaces, I don't think, and it might not like brackets. So we're just going to put time s, and we're going to add a value of 1. So every second it will add a value of 1. And we also then want to do if value. So if time s is greater than 9, then we want to set, actually let's use the math function again. We want to set time s to a value of 0. But we also want to make a new variable here. Time. So we're not really turning seconds into minutes here. That would be every 60 seconds. So every 10 seconds. So maybe time 10 seconds here. So we're going to take this time 10 seconds and we're going to add a value of 1. So every second we add 1 to time s, so the time in seconds. And then what we're going to do is every time that time seconds value reaches 9 or goes over 9, so if time s is greater than 9, we set time s to 0. But that means we need to add 1 to time 10s. So I've gone into the global variables again, and I've put the next variable to time 10 seconds, and now we've added a value of 1. And then that means that every time that one gets up to over 9, we need to set that one back to 0 and set the next one up by 1. So that would be the time 100 seconds adds a value of 1. But then the twist is, once that one reaches over 9, we now need to set them all to 9. So we're going to set time s to 9, time 10s to 9, and time 100s to 9. So once it reaches 999, it doesn't all then go back to 0. It just stays at 999. So now under the hood, this has a time that's working. So now we need to display that on the screen. So we're going to go back into the on initiate, and we're going to have a look and copy this event we made earlier with the tile switching, and we're going to paste it down after those 3 things there. But the difference is now, where we've said 0, we're now going to replace it with a variable. So we put var underscore, and then I'm going to put it all in caps, time s. Nope, sorry. If we have a look at the position, the 1555 will be the 100 column. So we're going to put time 100s there. Then after that, we're going to put var underscore time 10s. And then in the final one, we're going to put var underscore time just s, right? Time s. So now when we press play, hopefully those tiles will be updating on that overlay, and we'll be able to walk around and the time will be ticking up, and it will be amazing. But as fate will have it, we have a undefined global variable, time 100s. So normally my way of fixing this is on the scene initiate. What you want to do is go into math functions, and we're gonna set all of those. Or actually, we'll just set the one that didn't work. Time 100s. Set it to a value of 0, because that's what we need it to be at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of the scene anyway. And it feels like it doesn't know where that value is. We've only referenced it on itself like once, and we're adding. It doesn't know what it's adding to. It's weird because it doesn't always happen. There's obviously a little bug, but I seem to get around it every time. So I'm just going to rename it to be all caps, just in case it's a caps issue. But it was weird that it's not also telling me that time 10 seconds is also broken. Another technique is to put it into another scene. So normally put it on the original starting scene would work too. There we go. By actually putting it in the first scene, the first original scene, then it suddenly worked. It doesn't really make sense, but we'll let it work. So as you can see, the actual time is now ticking up every second. Just remember that having stuff on update will slow down the game because it's happening every second. But as you can see, it's working, it's adding up. So for example, you can be using this in your games. You can be having stats that change, that are displayed as you move around. You can have health, you can have time like I have, you can have anything you think of that has a number value. But also, if you make that switching numbers scene and you have icons instead, then you can replace icons. And also, if you think about how images fit together and you deconstruct it and reconstruct it, you know, by having a square or something rather than a line, then you can have images be updated as well. So basically, the world is your oyster when it comes to tile switching. Just remember that we do have a unique tile limit of 192 in this version of GB Studio. And so if you're going to be using tile switching, you may be limited in your artwork. However, I think that's a good problem to have because it keeps things simple and yeah, it makes us not over scope basically. So yeah, I hope this has enlightened you of how you will make a heads-up display in your own games. So I want to thank you for watching, and I'll put my patrons up on the screen right now. Thank you so much to you guys. You guys are the absolute best. Remember to like the video if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below and what you might want to see in the next video. Have you figured out this already? Have you already been using the tutorial that came out a year and a half ago and just simplified it? Because that tutorial really confused me, and I didn't think it could do what it does here. It was such a shame that I didn't realize, because there's so much you could be doing with it. So I really hope this has helped you, and I want to see what you can do with it. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.